We got the SAT and we got the ACT. What are the differences? Which tests should you take? And what to do about the test optional policy? All of this and more will be answered in this video. Hey guys, my name is Dylan Ellis. I am a college admissions coach at NextGen Admit and a recent Stanford graduate. If you're here with me today, you're probably planning ahead, thinking about how you're going to best prepare yourself to have the strongest college application, which I think is very good of you to do. Good job for looking at these kinds of videos. So given that you're interested in setting yourself up for success for the college admissions cycle, I'm going to give you something that you're going to really love. I've created a full hour-long masterclass on the top school admissions formula that breaks down all the different components that you need to have in order to stand out in college admissions, because every year it's becoming more competitive, and it's so important that you implement the strategy in your own college applications, because you spent all this time in high school working so hard and you want that to be worth it, you want that to pay off, and so you need to submit the best application possible. I'm giving you this whole masterclass. It's completely for free. You're gonna get a lot of value out of it. All you have to do is head over to nextgenadmit.com/masterclass, and from there you can register for free and even get some extra free bonuses I threw in there. But for now, let's get into the SAT and ACT content. So first, what's the difference between the SAT and the ACT? So content-wise, the SAT focuses more on reasoning and your analytical skills, while the SAT emphasizes a direct application of knowledge. So let's get into some of the features. We'll start with the format. The SAT is digital everywhere. It is shifted into a digital format now. It's no longer on paper. The ACT is still on paper in most places. Now for the length, SAT is about 2 hours long, whereas the ACT is about 3 hours long. So ACT, you're gonna be sitting in that testing center for quite some time. In terms of timing, the SAT has 98 questions and they give you 134 minutes. So that is roughly 1 minute and 22 seconds per question. The ACT has 215 questions and they give you 175 minutes. So that's about 49 seconds per question. So you're gonna have to be moving pretty fast because they do have more questions. In terms of the reading passages, the SAT reading passages are short with 1 question each, while the ACT reading passages are long with several questions each. The SAT also does not have a science section. They only have reading, writing and language, and math. When in terms of math, there's the non-calculator and calculator section. So those are the only sections on the SAT. Oh, there's also the optional essay if you want to add that as well. Whereas the ACT has 4 sections: English, reading, math, which allows you to have a calculator, and science. This is a core distinction of these two tests, where the ACT has a science section and the SAT does not. Some other fun facts: in terms of the math section, the SAT will give you a built-in math reference sheet and a built-in graphing calculator, whereas the ACT does not give you any of those things. So now let's talk a little bit more about each section. So we're going to start with reading, the reading section, and both of them assess your reading comprehension and vocabulary. However, the SAT passages tend to be denser and more analytical, while the ACT leans towards factual information. Then when it comes to the writing and language section, which is what it's called on the SAT, but on the ACT it's called the English section, they both test your grammar, the usage, and mechanics, but the SAT writing section also includes an optional essay. The ACT English focuses just on the multiple choice questions. Then in terms of the math section, both of them test your math skills, obviously, and they have increasing difficulty as you continue through the test. For the SAT, there are 2 different math sections. One of them you can use a calculator and one of them you cannot use a calculator for. But on the ACT, you can use your calculator for both math sections. In terms of concepts they cover, it is typically basic arithmetic, algebraic concepts, critical reasoning skills, but then also higher level concepts like trigonometry, advanced algebra, geometry, and basic statistics. And then of course, as I mentioned, the science section on the ACT, it has to do with a lot of scientific reasoning and analysis through use of graphs, charts, and experiments. Both tests are also scored differently, and that's important to know, especially if you're trying to like compare the scores between the two. You're gonna need to have like a calculator that will convert them to be standardized. So on the SAT, there's two main sections, the reading and writing, and then the math. And both of those, you can gain scores up to 800 points. The scale is actually from 200 to 800 points, so you can't actually get 0 points.
And that's why I love it.
And that would make the highest possible score that you can get a 1600. For a lot of top schools, you would want to aim to have above a 1500 SAT score. But I always recommend checking the website of the actual colleges that you're applying to and looking at their admission statistics to see what range people tend to fall into for students that get into their schools. The ACT, however, is scored from 1 to 36, so very different than the SAT. The goal is to get as high as you can to 36 as possible. Okay, so now which test should you take? Which one is the best for you? That is what you have to figure out, and you want to make sure that you're playing to your strengths and that you're taking the test that feels better for you, more comfortable, and better aligned with your skill set. So here's some questions to think about. If you excel at analyzing complex passages and reasoning through problems, then you might lean more towards the SAT. If you prefer straightforward questions, testing your knowledge base, you might prefer the ACT. If you thrive under time pressure and you can get through a lot of questions pretty quickly, the ACT might be what you want to go for. But if you prefer more time per question, you might want to lean towards the SAT. Ultimately, the way you should determine which test to take is by taking practice tests of both. This is what I did when I was a junior, I think, in high school. I sat down and I took the ACT and then I also took the SAT. Not in one day. Oh my gosh, that would be so many hours. But set aside time so that you can take both of those tests and then look at the scores and compare them. As I mentioned before, there are calculators that you can use online so that you can compare the scores because they'll standardize them and show you which one you actually scored higher on. Then whichever one you scored higher on, that's the one you want to focus on, and from there, really invest your time in studying for that one test. I don't really think it is necessary to spend so much time studying for both tests and like learning all the strategies for both of them at the same time. It's just not necessary. You're wasting your time that you could have been spending on other things like your extracurriculars or your actual college applications, which matter so much more. So I would just recommend pick the test that works better for you, the one that you score higher on, and then just invest your time in studying for that one and that one only. And now you might be wondering what to do now that a lot of schools have actually shifted to test optional policies. This was originally put in place due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, but a lot of schools have actually kept their test optional policies and are leaving that as an optional thing for students to submit or not. Other schools have actually started implementing the SAT and ACT requirement again, which I don't necessarily agree with, but here's how to determine for a test optional school whether you should submit your scores or not. It will be beneficial for you to submit a score if it is in a high range. When I say a high range, I mean that your score falls within the 50th percentile or above for the college that you're applying to. And so you have to go and figure that out. What is the 50th percentile? What is that range of scores? And each school has different statistics. So you're gonna have to go online and look up the admission statistics for that school. Figure out what scores did people usually fall in for students who got accepted to that school. So if your scores do fall into the 50th percentile or above, yes, I recommend you submit that score. It will help you in admissions because it's just another great thing you can add to your application. Also, submitting a really high SAT score can be great in helping offset any weaknesses in your application. If you have any like slightly lower grades or less strong extracurriculars, the SAT can help with that as well. Just be aware that the admissions game is like a puzzle. You're just putting all of these pieces together, and they, the college admissions officers, are gonna view your profile as a whole rather than looking at just one of the pieces. It's all about how you form the picture as a whole. Now, if your score is on the lower end, if it's lower than the 50th percentile of students who typically get into that school, then I would recommend not submitting it if this is a test optional school. The reason being is because they are test optional, they are giving students the freedom to submit their scores or not, right? So that means that all the students who do submit their scores will tend to have higher scores. So it's kind of shifting the range of scores that get submitted to that school. So you don't want to submit a super low score if you know that like everybody else who is going to be submitting their scores is going to have a score on the higher end. So in that case, it would be better to just not submit it. And they're very clear about the reason why they're test optional is that it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your chances of admission if you do not submit your scores. I know plenty of people who went to school with me at Stanford who did not submit any test scores at all. Now, it is important to note that if you are going to not submit your scores, it is even more crucial that you craft a really compelling application and you really invest your time in your college essays. Your college essays are how you are going to stand out as a student. And I say this actually not only just to the people who are not submitting their scores, but to everybody. Everybody, no matter whether you're submitting your scores or not, your college essays are insanely important because that is what's going to help you stand out. Your scores will not help you stand out because frankly, there's a lot of smart people applying to these top schools and they're gonna have high scores. So it doesn't set you apart from the rest. What will is your story and your narrative and how you craft each of the parts of your application to come together as a cohesive whole. And that narrative framework and all that storytelling and making connections between your different experiences is my specialty and what I love so much and what I focus on. That is how you play the game in admissions. It's all about how you're presenting your experiences and your achievements, how you're framing them in your application to stand out, to be competitive, to show them that you are worthy of attending their college and you are a great fit for them. Now, it's also very, very important that you do this in a way that is authentic. Right? Like, I don't want this to feel icky or that you're stretching the truth or you're trying to fit yourself into a mold or a box. That's not what this is about. This is about conveying your uniqueness and your individuality in a way that feels really true to you. So if you are looking for that standout strategy on how to do all of those things, how to submit a standout application to your dream schools, then once again, I really recommend you check out that masterclass. It's totally free, just takes an hour of your time. And I think it can truly influence how you go about this college application season. So check it out at nextgenadmit.com/masterclass. At the end of the day, you just want to make sure that you are crafting an application that is best suited for you. So that may mean choosing the SAT over the ACT if that's what fits your skill sets. And that might mean submitting your scores, or that might mean not submitting your scores to a test optional school. It's whatever makes the most sense for you and for your application and how you're framing your story. Once again, my name is Dylan and I'm here to help you apply to college and get into your dream schools. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.